Hey everybody, my name is Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. I'm standing in front of approximately 5,000 CDs. Now in all likelihood that's a larger music collection than just about anyone watching this channel probably has, but the truth of the matter is, if you subscribe to a streaming service like Spotify or Apple Music, you have instant access to nearly every album behind me, plus tens of thousands more. That kind of access and convenience has been one of the key factors in why many music fans have all but stopped buying music on compact disc. Some have even gone so far as to sell off their old CD collections and have gone 100% digital. And you know, it's hard to argue with that when you consider that for around $10 a month, all of this can be contained in something as small as this. The problem is, though, if you've gone all digital with your music or movies, you don't actually own anything. Now that may seem kind of obvious when it comes to streaming, but what you may not realize is that if you do buy digital music or movies, you don't actually own them. In fact, the digital service you supposedly bought them from can delete them at any time. The subject of digital media ownership went viral recently when a Twitter user shared their story about how iTunes deleted 3 digital movies that they'd purchased from their cloud library. When the user complained to Apple, the company offered to compensate them with a few free digital movie rentals. Naturally, there was a lot of uproar about the idea that Apple could delete a user's purchases with little to no compensation. But what this incident has done is put a spotlight on the reality of what is actually happening when it comes to the so-called purchase of digital media. The reality being, you're not buying, you're licensing. You're paying for the right to personally use that digital media for an undefined period of time, and often within specific geographic boundaries. Geographic boundaries, in fact, were at the heart of the problem in the incident in question. When the user quote-unquote bought their digital movies, they'd only really paid for the right to use them in a specific country. When they moved from Australia to Canada, they essentially lost the right to continue to use that media. Whether they realized it or not, that was all part of the terms of service they agreed to when they signed up for iTunes. It was all there in the fine print, you know, the stuff we scroll through without reading and then naively click the button labeled I agree. Of course, an international move may seem like a bit of a fringe case for most people. If you're not planning to become an expatriate, you might not think that your digital media is at risk. But the truth of the matter is, the original copyright holders of your media can withdraw your access to that media at any time. If Sony Music and Apple fail to renew their contract at some point in the future, you may no longer have access to the music that you previously purchased in iTunes. The same goes for Amazon. If, for example, you buy a Marvel movie on digital, but Amazon and Disney get into a contract dispute, you could lose the ability to watch that movie, and it could disappear from your digital library. The same goes for those digital codes that you get when you buy your DVDs. You don't own those digital copies, you just have the right to use them as long as the copyright holder keeps them available. For their part, companies like Apple and Amazon are doing what they can to avoid these situations, which is why they more strongly push their subscription models. Instead of buying individual digital tracks or albums, they'd rather that you subscribe to their monthly services. Apple is even rumored to be planning to discontinue iTunes for buying music and only offering subscriptions to Apple Music. There, users have no real expectation of ownership. You can thank Netflix for that widespread mindset. Movies come and go from Netflix every month, and nobody causes a commotion if one disappears from their watch list. The same thing can happen on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music Unlimited. Subscribers can add an album to their library, but there's no guarantee it will always be there. In fact, when it comes to music from the major labels, it probably won't be. You can be sure the music industry is closely watching what's happening with streaming video services right now. Disney is about to launch their own streaming service to rival Netflix, which will soon be the only place to watch many of their most popular films, including blockbusters like Star Wars and the Marvel movies. If Disney's streaming video service proves successful, don't be surprised if major record labels go the same route for music. If Warner, Sony, or Universal decide to launch their own music streaming services, you can be sure many major artists would disappear from today's popular platforms. Suddenly, it won't be enough to subscribe to one music service. You'll need 2 or 3, maybe more. So what's a music fan to do? Well, for starters, download all of your media. Cloud access to your movies and music is handy, and it saves space on your computer or phone. But if you don't download the files that you've supposedly purchased, they could go away at any time without notice. Once you download your purchases, you can continue to use them indefinitely, even if they get removed from Amazon or iTunes. So that's great for digital purchases, but it doesn't necessarily work that way for streaming services. Even though most streamers have options to download media to use offline, that's offered for convenience rather than archival purposes. If a streamer removes media from the cloud, they can usually disable or delete downloaded copies of that media as well. If you're one of those people who sold or gave away their CD collection because you thought you could listen to all of it streaming now, you could be in for a rude awakening. Which brings us back to this: music on CD. No matter what happens with Apple or Amazon or Spotify, this music isn't going to go away. Let me share a sort of cautionary tale with you. When I got my first MP3 player back in the 90s, I started to rip every CD I bought to digital. But when streaming services came around several years ago, I enjoyed the mobile convenience they offered, and I slowly stopped transferring MP3s to my phone. When the hard drive in my computer crashed, I lost all my MP3s. I was pretty upset at first, but what I soon found was that I still had access to most of what I wanted via streaming. And the music that was missing? Well, it was a simple matter just to rip those CDs again. The primary lesson that you should take away from that story is always have a backup. Flash drives and external hard drives are cheaper than ever, so be sure to back up your files. But when it comes to my music, I know I'm safe because I can always go back to the source. If a record label pulls their albums from the cloud or I cancel my subscription, I'll still be able to listen to everything I love. The thing we should all be concerned about, though, is the future of music, specifically the future of consuming and listening to music. As much as I love my CDs, there's no denying the future is digital, not compact disc, not vinyl, not any physical format. The future of music, as well as home video and software, will be all digital. It won't be long before all of those things will only exist in the digital realm, and you won't have a choice but to stream them. You won't be able to retain a physical copy of your media. Not easily, anyway. You won't own any of it, and your ability, your right to use that media will depend on you continuing to pay for it. For new music, you won't have any other option. That's the only way that new music will be released in the digital future. But when it comes to the pre-all digital era, which is now, and everything that's come before, you can still own the listening experience. I don't have to pay every time I want to play Abbey Road by the Beatles. I don't have to subscribe to anything when I want to listen to Nine Inch Nails. And I don't need an internet connection every time I put on a Miles Davis album. That's something you should think about if you're considering getting rid of your CDs or vinyl copies of the music that you love. Because in the digital future, you'll have to pay for it again, and again, and again. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.